COVID Tale 2, The Businesswoman by LT.
Part 1.
The fluorescent lights of the office were the color of an impending headache. For a place with a seven-figure annual revenue, our corporate office felt like a giant air-conditioned box full of quiet dread. We weren't a noisy bunch. We were an efficient bunch, a team of 20-somethings and 30-somethings with an unnerving ability to communicate with a series of silent nods and emails. The company was on a hiring freeze, but no one seemed to care. They were just here. I, Amelia, a beautiful woman with a curly afro in a purple business suit, was the exception. My personal belief was that if a meeting could be an email, it should be a haiku about a cat. I'd learned early on that, in the corporate world, sarcasm was a tool you had to use sparingly, like a sharp scalpel. At my desk, I was a stone-cold professional. My work was impeccable, my presentations were flawless, and my smile was as genuine as a politician's promise. After work, the mask came off. The moment I walked out the doors, the sarcasm came back full force. That night, I was meeting a guy named Mark. He was an investment banker with a solid profile and an expressionless face. I'd been on a dozen dates with him, and I still didn't know if he had a soul. My friends, or what was left of my social circle, told me I was too picky. I told them I wasn't looking for a soulmate. I was looking for a decent drink and a break from my spreadsheets. I spotted him at the bar sitting stiff and straight on his bar stool. He didn't smile when I walked in, just gave a brief, curt nod. "Amelia," he said, his voice as flat as his tie. "Mark," I replied, sitting down and signaling to the bartender. "I'm told you're a creature of habit. Let's make it a double scotch. Neat." He didn't react, just stared at the wall behind the bartender, his eyes vacant. It was a normal thing for him, the 1,000-yard stare. I'd gotten used to it. Everyone I knew these days seemed to have it. Later in his car, it got weirder. He'd been talking about a company mandate, something about a new health initiative, and I just tuned him out. My mind was on an herbalist I followed online who was selling a new blend of echinacea and lavender. I hated needles, had since I was a kid. My dad tried to drill it into my head that vaccines were the right thing to do, but I always got out of it. I'd fake a fever, a stomachache, anything to avoid a shot. I was the master of my own health, and I had the herbs to prove it. "So it's a simple process, a quick injection," Mark was saying, his voice droning on. I leaned back in the car seat, my sarcasm pushing past the boredom. "Oh, really? A quick injection? Is it a quick injection of common sense? Because that's what a lot of people need these days." He didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. He just nodded slowly, his eyes still fixed on the road ahead. "It's for the greater good," he said, his voice a cursory front. I just rolled my eyes and looked out the window. That night, I couldn't sleep. The words from my mom's health blog, the ones she used to say were gospel, replayed in my head. "Your body is a temple, Amelia. Don't let them put anything into it that doesn't come from the earth." The next morning, the office was the same quiet, sterile place. I was halfway through my third cup of green tea when my phone buzzed. It was an email from my boss, a subject line that made the blood run cold. A quick chat. That was the professional way of saying, "Your life is about to get a lot more complicated." I stood up, smoothed out my dress, and headed to his office, a strange sense of foreboding in my gut. I walked into Mr. Evans's office, the thick carpet muffling my footsteps. His office was a perfect reflection of his corporate persona. All clean lines, glass, and muted colors. A framed motivational poster hung on the wall. Something about synergy. The place was so immaculate it felt less like a workspace and more like a sterile display case for human ambition. Mr. Evans looked up from his desk, a pleasant, practiced smile on his face. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Amelia," he said, his voice as smooth and polished as the oak of his desk. "Thank you for coming in." I sat, my back ramrod straight. "Of course, Mr. Evans. Is everything all right?" "Everything is wonderful," he replied, but the smile never reached his eyes. They remained a dull, dark brown, unblinking. He clasped his hands on the desk, his fingers tapping a strange, precise rhythm that I almost missed. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap, tap. He leaned forward, his elbows on the desk. I wanted to talk to you about a new company initiative. As you know, we're a forward-thinking organization. We value efficiency and a unified team above all else. To that end, we're implementing a new health protocol. My stomach tightened into a hard, cold knot. Here it was, the moment I had been dreading since the email arrived. I forced a calm expression onto my face. We believe that a healthy team is an efficient team, he continued, his voice a droning monotone. And to ensure our continued success, we're making a simple but crucial adjustment. We're asking all employees to get the new COVID injection for health reasons. He said injection like it was a minor detail, like it was a new company policy about paper clips. I understand, I said, my voice as level as I could make it. But as you know, I prefer to manage my health with more natural methods. I haven't had a vaccine since I was a child. Mr. Evans's placid smile didn't waver. I'm aware of your personal beliefs, Amelia. We respect them. However, this is for the greater good of the company. It's a matter of safety and continuity. We need to be a seamless, united front. His words were devoid of any real human emotion. He wasn't arguing with me. He was just stating facts, a computer reading a pre-programmed script. The tapping of his fingers on the desk became a little faster. I don't believe in putting things into my body that come from a lab, I said, my voice firm. It goes against everything I believe. My body is a temple, and I prefer to keep it that way. The smile finally cracked. Just a fraction, but it was enough. The corners of his mouth twitched downward. His eyes, still flat and unblinking, now held a hint of something cold and menacing. Amelia, he said, his voice dropping to a low, chilling purr. This is not about what you believe. This is about what is required. Your performance is outstanding, one of the best in your division. But we cannot have a single variable introducing a weakness into the system. You are an outlier, and outliers must be corrected for the health of the whole. He was looking at me with an unnerving intensity, as if he were scanning my soul for a flaw. His hands moved from the desk to the arms of his chair, his fingers curling into tight, white-knuckled fists. The calm facade was completely gone. This wasn't a man. It was a force of nature, a thing of pure, cold logic. The threat was no longer veiled. It was as sharp and clear as a scalpel. I will not do it, I said, my voice a whisper, but my resolve was as strong as steel. I will not betray my beliefs for this company. I won't. Mr. Evans stared at me for a long, unsettling moment. A flicker of something I could only describe as pure, unadulterated rage flashed in his eyes before it was gone, replaced by a perfect, empty calm. He slowly stood up, his movements fluid and precise. That's a shame, Amelia, he said, his voice flat once more. He walked around his desk, a slow, methodical pace, and stopped just a few feet away from me. We'll have to take your situation under advisement. And you should know the team has already started their preparations. We're all in this together after all. The words sent a shiver down my spine. The meeting was over. The game had begun. I stood up and walked out of the office, the silent, efficient drones of my colleagues looking up as I passed. I knew in that moment that I wasn't just on my own. I was a target. A week crawled by, each day a slow, agonizing descent into isolation. The office, once my personal kingdom of solitude and efficiency, had become a quiet and hostile landscape. The chatter was gone. The casual office gossip had dried up and been replaced by a deafening silence. People would walk by my desk and their conversations would die, their eyes flickering with a cold, judgmental assessment. It was like I was a ghost they couldn't quite see, but whose presence made them uncomfortable. It wasn't just the silence that was unnerving. The new energy in the office was a chilling cacophony of the unnatural. The drones from before were gone. In their place were two unsettling extremes, Some colleagues, the hyper ones, had an unsettling energy. They'd bounce in their chairs, their words coming out in a rapid-fire staccato, their eyes wide and bright with a kind of restless, inhuman energy. They laughed too loudly at bad jokes, and their movements were unnervingly fast. Others, the aggressive ones, had a tense, coiled energy. Their movements were jerky, their faces perpetually scowling, and their voices were low and filled with an irritable edge. They'd slam doors and snap at anyone who came close. I saw no one with a normal energy anymore. Everyone was a wired-up caricature of their former selves. The entire office felt like a bomb waiting to go off, and I was the fuse. It had to be because of the vaccine. The thought was a burning certainty in my gut, but a part of me, the part that was a pragmatist, tried to reason it away. But how could a single shot create such a bizarre split in human behavior? The only other common thread was me. I was the last one left who hadn't gotten it. My only confidant, my closest friend in the office, was a woman named Tanya. We'd have coffee together in the break room, and she'd laugh at my sarcastic jokes about the work week. I knew I needed to talk to her. She was my last hope for a sane human connection in this corporate asylum. I found her at her desk, typing furiously. I leaned against the door frame of her cubicle, waiting for her to look up. "Hey," I said, my voice softer than usual. She flinched, then looked up, her expression a mix of surprise and forced cheerfulness. "Hey, Amelia, what's up?" I came in and sat down on a chair nearby and rolled it next to her desk. "Everyone knows, don't they?" I asked, cutting straight to the point, "that I'm not getting vaccinated." She looked down at her keyboard, her fingers hovering over the keys. She gave a reluctant nod. "Yeah, it's been a thing. People are talking." A wave of humiliation and anger washed over me. Why? It's my choice. Why is everyone acting like I'm a carrier for the Black Plague? Tonya looked up, her brow furrowed. "I don't know," she said, her voice a low whisper. "It's so weird. They're so crazy." The word was like a key, unlocking a shared understanding between us. "It's insane how they're treating you." She let out a short, nervous laugh, a sound that felt hollow in the sterile office air. "I know," I said, leaning in, a sense of relief flooding me. I wasn't alone. They're not even themselves anymore. I feel like I'm talking to a bunch of robots. Tanya's laughter became a little more pronounced, a little more jarring. She looked at me, a strange, knowing smirk on her face. "You know what's crazy, Amelia?" she said, her voice a little too loud. "It's insane that you're willing to risk your job over this. You're so good at what you do, so why would you risk it all?" The question, so innocent on the surface, felt like a betrayal. "Because it's what I believe in, Tanya. My body is a temple, not a pincushion." Tanya laughed again, a sound that sent a cold shiver down my spine. "Right," she said, and then with an easy, fluid motion, she pulled up her sleeve. On the underside of her forearm, a small white bandage was stuck to her skin. "I got mine on Monday." I froze. The world tilted sideways. The air in the room felt thick and suffocating. My mind screamed in protest. I looked at her, at the familiar kindness in her eyes that was now mixed with a jarring, placid emptiness. You got it?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. "Tonya? Why?" She looked at her bandage, then back at me as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "I have kids to feed, Amelia. I have weaves to get sewn in and nails to get manicured." The words, so mundane and ordinary, were chilling. Her laughter returned, a bright, manic sound. "You can keep your herbs and your temples. I had to do what I had to do." I stared at her, my friend, the woman I had trusted. My mind, a place of order and logic, couldn't comprehend it. "You're the crazy one," I said, the words a desperate cry. "You're all crazy." But she just smiled, a wide, vacant grin that held no warmth or humanity. I stood up, the box scraping against the floor, and backed away from her, my friend who was a stranger, who had chosen to become one of them. The isolation I had felt before was a whisper compared to the deafening silence I felt now. I was completely alone, the only one left. The office wasn't just quiet anymore, it was a theater of passive-aggressive hostility, and I was the main act. Every time I left my desk, a wave of cold stares would follow me. Whispers would start, hushed and sharp, ending in snickers. The hyper colleagues would laugh a little too loudly when I walked by, their wired energy making the sound a grating manic sound. The aggressive ones would slam their cubicle doors shut as I approached. The humiliation was a physical weight on my shoulders, a tangible shame. I tried to ignore it, to focus on my work, but the constant pressure was a living thing, a cold hand on my back. The final straw came as I walked to the kitchen to refill my tea. A group of colleagues were gathered by the coffee machine, and as I approached, one of them, a project manager named Scott, stepped into my path. He had a smug, superior look on his face, his eyes gleaming with a strange satisfaction. "Word is," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear, "you're not getting with the program, Amelia," making it harder for everyone else. I stopped, my heart pounding. I was tired of the whispers, tired of the stares. "My health is my business, Scott," I said, my voice low and firm. "It's my body, my choice." A ripple of cold laughter went through the group. Scott's face twisted into a parody of a smile. "Oh, my body, my choice. How progressive of you," he sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm. He gestured to the group around him. "We all had a choice, too. We chose to be responsible. We chose to protect our jobs and our colleagues. But you want to put all of us at risk because of some crazy ideas you read on the internet." The laughter grew louder, more mocking. The energy was electric, a kind of unified, hateful chorus. My face burned with a shame and fury so potent I felt sick. I wasn't just being judged. I was being publicly condemned. I was outnumbered. I turned and fled, the jeers of my colleagues a knife in my back. I ran to the one place in the office that was supposed to be safe, a place that promised neutrality and fairness, the Human Resources Office. I burst through the double doors, gasping for breath, the silence a sudden, deafening relief. A man and a woman, both wearing bland suits, sat at their desks. I approached the man, my voice trembling. "I need to report something," I said, my voice raw. "I'm being harassed by my coworkers. Publicly shamed, all because of the vaccine mandate." The man, his nameplate reading Mr. Finch, listened patiently, his hands folded on his desk. His expression was a carefully constructed mask of professional concern. "I understand your frustration, Amelia," he said, his voice plain and calm. "But harassment is a serious charge. What specifically happened?" I told him everything, from the whispers to the public confrontation. I ended with the phrase, "My body, my choice." He nodded slowly. "I see." He looked over at the woman in the room, a Mrs. Davis, who was staring at me with a detached, clinical expression. Mrs. Davis leaned forward and whispered, "Can't say I blame them." The comment was just loud enough for me to hear. I felt a surge of cold dread. This wasn't a place of safety, it was just another theater. Mr. Finch cleared his throat, his gaze unwavering. "Amelia, we're going to have to flip this around on you. We have a concern. It's not a matter of your coworkers harassing you. It's a matter of them being concerned for their health. The team has informed us of your beliefs, your aversion to modern science. It's not right that you are putting the health and safety of your coworkers at risk." His words hit me like a physical blow. They weren't just flipping the blame. They were turning my beliefs into a weapon against me. I was the problem, not them. I looked from Mr. Finch to Mrs. Davis, their faces both placid and judging. "Now, if you'll excuse us," Mr. Finch said, "we need to discuss this in private." With a slow, fluid movement, he reached under his desk and pulled out a plain white surgical mask. He put it on, his eyes, now just two vacant slits, staring at me from behind the sterile cloth. Mrs. Davis did the same. The act was a silent, powerful rejection. It wasn't about a virus. It was about conformity. It was about me being an outsider and them being the protected, perfect collective. Somehow, I felt more attacked than when I entered. I turned and walked out, my head held high, but my body felt hollowed out. I was defeated. I got back to my desk and sat down, the quiet hum of the office now a menacing silence. The world I knew was gone. I was alone, a pariah in a world of monsters I couldn't even see. A new email pinged my phone. It was from Mr. Evans. The subject line was chilling. Final mandate. The attachment was a schedule. It was a list of all the employees and their scheduled appointments for their final shots. At the very bottom of the list, a name was highlighted in bold, Amelia, and a date, tomorrow. The email from Mr. Evans was a cold, final nail in the coffin of my old life. The name Amelia in bold, the date, tomorrow. They weren't just threatening me anymore. They were coming for me. A lesser woman, a weaker one, might have run. I saw the empty threats of the city streets in my mind's eye, the flat-eyed people and the silent judging conformity. I could flee, become a ghost, a refugee in a world that had become a prison. But that wasn't me. It had never been me. I was a fighter, a problem solver. My body, my spirit, my choices, they were my own. To surrender would be to let them win, to let them steal a part of me that was more vital than my breath. I wasn't just fighting for my life, I was fighting for my soul. The next morning, I walked into the office. The air was thick with a chilling anticipation, a palpable silence. It was a hunting ground, and I was the prey. But I walked with my head held high, my spine straight, and a flicker of defiance in my eyes. The stairs followed me to my desk. No whispers this time, just cold, judging silence. My first act of defiance was to put on my headphones, not to listen to music, but to create my own private space, a small island of normalcy in a sea of encroaching madness. The first tactic of the day came from my colleague, a woman named Sharon. She walked by my desk, her movements unnaturally fluid, and without saying a word, she gently nudged a pamphlet about vaccine safety onto my desk. Her smile was docile, her eyes dreary. I looked at the pamphlet, then back at her. "Keep your propaganda," I said, my voice sharp and low. "I'll keep my herbs." Her smile didn't waver. She simply floated away, a serene, disturbing ghost in the corporate machine. The intimidation escalated. I went to the break room to get my tea, and a group of my coworkers had already gathered there. They weren't talking. They were just standing, facing the wall, their backs to me. When I entered, they turned in perfect, silent unison, their faces devoid of emotion, their eyes boring into me with a collective, unsettling stare. "What's the matter?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Did I interrupt the morning seance?" "You're all looking a little pale. Did you forget to water your plants this morning?" No one said a word. Their stares were a weight, a suffocating pressure designed to make me break. I went to the kettle, my hands trembling slightly, and poured my hot water. I could feel their eyes on me, their silent judgment of physical force. It wasn't about convincing me anymore. It was about breaking me, about making me feel like a bug under a magnifying glass. I walked out, the feeling of their cold, collective gaze still on my back. The final confrontation came in the afternoon. I was in a conference room trying to review a contract when Mr. Evans walked in, followed by a handful of my colleagues, including Tanya. The door clicked shut behind them. "Amelia," Mr. Evans said, his voice a low, chilling purr, "we're all here to help you. You're our friend. You're a valued member of the team, but you're making a mistake. The vaccine is your only option. You need to come with us." I looked at their faces. Tonya, the hyper ones, the aggressive ones, their differences had melted away, replaced by a single, focused purpose. Their eyes, once so different, were all the same now, flat, lifeless, and filled with a disturbing hunger. "I'm not going anywhere with you," I said, my voice trembling but my resolve steel. "You can't do this. This is illegal. This is insane." A deep, aggressive grumble came from one of my coworkers, a man named Dave. He took a step forward, his jaw clenched, his eyes filled with a raw, inhuman anger. "Amelia, please," Tonya said, her voice a strange, sing-song plea that lacked any warmth. "We want to help you. We want you to be like us." She pointed to her arm, the faded red mark a symbol of her surrender. My facade of defiance started to crack, and a cold wave of pure terror washed over me. I was trapped. I was alone, facing a group of people who were no longer human. I was the last holdout, the last human in a world of monsters wearing sheep's clothing, but I would not break. I took a shaky breath, squared my shoulders, and met their collective glare with my own. "I'll give you a choice," I said, my voice suddenly strong. "You can stand there and act like a bunch of brainwashed robots, or you can get out of my way." The silence was a palpable thing. Then, Mr. Evans's voice cut through the air, cold and decisive. "You've made your choice, Amelia. We've made ours. The time for discussion is over." I knew in that moment that this was not just a meeting. This was a battle for my life. The silence in the conference room was a living thing, heavy and cold. My defiance had drawn a line in the sand, and they were ready to cross it. Mr. Evans's final words, "The time for discussion is over," hung in the air like a death sentence. I looked at their faces. Tanya, Dave, Sharon, Mr. Evans. Their individual features had been swallowed by a single focused aggression. They started to move, a slow, methodical advance, their feet shuffling on the plush carpet. The air crackled with a menacing energy. This wasn't just a threat anymore. This was the beginning of the end. A sudden clarity, sharp and cold, cut through my fear. I had to get to the door. I had to buy myself time. I raised my hands in a gesture of surrender, my voice a whisper. "Okay," I said, my words barely audible. "Okay, you win. I'll do it, but I need to use the bathroom first. I'm going to be sick." A flicker of something, was it satisfaction, crossed their faces. They stopped, their collective gaze still fixed on me, but the tension in the room eased just enough for me to take a shaky step toward the door. I moved slowly, trying not to show the frantic terror that was a drum in my chest. I reached the door, my hand on the cool metal of the handle, but before I could turn it, Tonya, her eyes wide and manic, was suddenly right behind me. "No," she said, her voice a sing-song growl. "You can take the shot first. It doesn't take long." Her hand shot out and she grabbed a fistful of my hair, yanking my head back. The pain was sharp and visceral, a shocking, ugly break from the psychological horror. My vision blurred for a second, but a white-hot fury instantly replaced my fear. This was my body, and I was not going to let them control it. My elbow shot back, catching Tonya hard in the stomach. A grunt escaped her lips, and her grip on my hair loosened just enough for me to twist free. I spun around and slapped her across the face with a hard, resounding crack. Tanya's head snapped to the side, and a look of confusion and rage flashed in her eyes. I didn't wait. I turned the handle, threw the door open, and ran. "Get her! We need to help her!" Mr. Evans's voice, a chilling, distorted scream, echoed down the hallway behind me. I burst into the main office, my sudden appearance a jarring disruption to the unsettling calm. Dozens of heads snapped up, their vacant, flat eyes focusing on me. The drones, the hyper ones, the aggressive ones, their differences had vanished, replaced by a single, focused purpose. They were a hunting pack, and I was the prey. The phrase, "Get her, we need to help her," was being repeated by colleagues, a synchronized chorus of lies that made my blood run cold. I ran, my heels pounding on the sleek floor. I knew the office building better than anyone. I knew its secret shortcuts, its emergency exits, its dead ends. My feet carried me through the maze of cubicles, my mind racing, remembering every turn, every corner, every possible escape route. I dodged a filing cabinet that was shoved into my path by a coworker, the heavy metal box scraping against the carpet with a screech. I jumped over a chair as another colleague, his face contorted in a silent snarl, tried to trip me. They weren't just fast, they were a hive mind. As I ducked into a hallway, I could see two people at the other end, already waiting for me. I didn't hesitate. I threw my body against the fire alarm, the glass shattering with a deafening crash and a blaring shriek. The alarm was an assault on the senses, a chaotic, jarring sound that caused a momentary confusion in my pursuers. In that split second of hesitation, I slid down a stairwell, taking the steps two at a time, my body a desperate blur of motion. I could hear their heavy footsteps thundering down the stairs behind me, the sound a horrifying echo of my rabid pursuers. They were relentless. I didn't look back. I just ran, my muscles burning, my lungs screaming for air. I burst through the emergency exit at the ground floor, the cold rush of the outside air a welcome shock to my system. I didn't stop to look back. I just ran across the parking lot, weaving between cars, the sound of the blaring alarm and the frantic pursuit fading into the background. I was free. I had escaped. But I was alone in a world of crazies, feeling like a fugitive in my own life. And I knew with a chilling certainty that they wouldn't stop. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs felt like lead, the frantic alarm of the office building fading into a low, distant hum. I didn't stop until I reached my apartment building, a sleek, modern high-rise that had always felt like a sanctuary. I fumbled with my key card, my hands trembling, and burst into the lobby. The polite hum of the elevator, the clean, sterile scent of the air, and the quiet of the empty space were a shocking and beautiful contrast to the chaos I had just escaped. My apartment on the 18th floor was a fortress of solitude. I slammed the door shut, locking and deadbolting it, and slid to the floor, my back against the cool wood. I was safe. For now. My hands were shaking too much to pack. I needed to know I wasn't alone. My first act was to grab my backup phone, the cheap burner I used for my casual dates and hookups. I dialed my best friend's number, my heart hammering against my ribs. She answered on the second ring, her voice tinny and distant. "Amelia? You sound insane. What's wrong?" "Jessica, listen to me," I pleaded, my voice a frantic whisper. "I need help. My coworkers, they're trying to force me to get the vaccine. They're acting like they're not even human." A long pause hung on the line. I could hear a hollow, repetitive tapping sound in the background. "Amelia, that's not funny," Jessica said, her voice sounding strained. "You're stressed. Everyone's a little stressed right now. Maybe you should just get the shot and move on with your life." The tapping sound continued, like a metronome from hell. "It's for the greater good, you know, just to make things easier." Her words were hollow, devoid of any real empathy. I hung up, my heart sinking. Next, I tried my cousin, a woman who had always been a rock of stubborn common sense. She answered, but her voice was strange, too cheerful. "Amelia, what's up, girl? I haven't heard from you in ages." "I can't talk long," I said, my voice low and urgent. "I'm in trouble. I need a place to go, somewhere safe. My colleagues, they're not right. They're chasing me, trying to force me to get vaccinated." My cousin's laughter was a bright, brittle sound. "Chasing you? That's nuts. Sounds like a party, girl. You should just get it done. It's not a big deal. We're all in this together." Her laughter continued, a bright, manic sound. I ended the call, the laughter echoing in my ears. The horror that had consumed my work and dating life had seemingly consumed my personal life, too. Everyone I knew, everyone I had trusted, was gone. I collapsed on the sofa, the full weight of my terror finally settling in my bones. I was a pariah, completely and utterly isolated now. I had no one to run to. I took one last desperate chance, dialing the number for my Aunt Tabitha, the most eccentric and grounded person I knew. It rang once, twice, a third time. Then she answered. Her voice was a warm, soothing balm. "Amelia? Is that you, honey? Your voice sounds like you've seen a ghost. What is going on?" My voice broke and a single hot tear of relief ran down my face. "Aunt Tabitha, I'm so scared. I need your help. I'm being hunted. My coworkers, my friends, they're all gone, and they're trying to make me like them." There was a long pause on the other end, but unlike the others, this pause wasn't empty. It was filled with a deep, thoughtful silence. When she spoke again, her voice was calm and steady. "Oh, honey, I know. I've been watching it. It's terrifying. Get to my place. I don't know what's going on, but I'll protect you." Okay, now I had a real option. Though Aunt Tabitha was a city over, it was hope. A real, solid plan.
Thanks for listening. Go to part 2 to hear what happens next.